This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening and welcome to our week 3 GoTo training for advanced entertainment law. This week we are going to be previewing the remainder of the month as it relates to your assignments, your deliverables. So that way this week you'll hopefully get a little bit of a jump start on assignments as we'll be looking at your legal documents, your different registration forms assignment, and that will actually be our initial focus for the GoTo. We'll then look at all remaining assignments throughout the month. So we'll be looking at any of those major milestone assignments. For my online cohort, as always, make sure you are keeping up to speed. And this month in particular, everybody is doing a great job with staying on top of the postings overall. So make sure that you are continuing to post before Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. for my online cohort for the initial discussion board post, and then before 11:59 p.m. on Sunday night to ensure that you are taken care of and up to speed when it comes to the discussion boards. But tonight we're really going to focus in on those main cornerstone assignments that will apply to both campus as well as online. So the first of these that we are going to discuss and cover is the legal documents assignment. This assignment, you are going through and completing a business registration, a copyright registration, as well as a trademark registration. So these are the three main registration forms that any new business in a creative space will consider. A lot of the intellectual property audits talked about copyrights that you would own and register, particularly marketing materials or content that you would create, video footage you would create, video game visuals that you would create as far as screen still shots or screen layouts, content related to music, sound recordings, different written works. Text can protect even code if that's an element that would apply. Copy, as far as content you would write to go on your website, could fall under copyright as well. In addition to that, trademark had vast coverage on the IP audit. Trademarks seem to be kind of a crowd favorite. It typically is, where you are registering business names, slogan, logo, things of that nature. So I am going to jump out of the presentation and jump over to the registration assignments. So this will be our main focus. So for those of you joining us via the archive, please make sure that you have access to this document so that way you can follow along. This is kind of the best deal in GoTo training, I humbly believe, because within the first hour ish, we're going to go ahead and do this assignment together. So any questions you may have, please let me know. I like to joke that some of my fellow attorneys with the Bar Association aren't super excited for me to walk through all of these forms and give you kind of some pulse checks and some different overview aspects along the way. But I also know it's definitely helpful just to kind of put these things on your radar to start thinking about as you head towards final project. So this assignment is worth 10% of your final overall grade. You probably noticed that when you downloaded it and saw it on the platform. You also may notice as you scroll through that the second page has a whole bunch of point deductions that are 5 points each. This is why we're going to go through this line by line. If you've ever heard the phrase, the devil is in the details, you're staring at it right here, which is why we go through it line by line. This is a pay it forward for everyone involved. So pay it forward for me because I don't like to take 5 points off at a time. This brings me absolutely no joy, actually the polar opposite. So I want to make sure you are as well informed as possible. In addition to that, along the same vein, it's important for you to have a solid knowledge base when it comes to business, copyright, and trademark registration. Many of our students and alum are going to be actively involved in the business industry in a number of different ways. So it's important to learn these things early on in your path. They're good skill sets for you to be able to pick up. They're things that are grab and go. You can apply them pretty clearly as you maneuver through this space. So our first stop when it comes to worksheets for registrations is going to be your business registration worksheet. Now, I want to give some general tips and advice for business registration worksheet before we really delve in. And it really applies to the first couple of lines, although there are a few other elements we're going to discuss in more depth. So filling these forms out in general, you are completing these for your business plan company. You can use these as an appendices in your business plan as you move forward. These are also good to use as a template if you would choose to move forward to register with an actual registration organization. You can refer back to this assignment and or the notes to kind of give you a general overview of some things to think about. With your company name, you're going to list the name of your business, and then you're going to list a description, an abbreviation of what type of company you will have. So for the purpose of me filling this out, I'm going to just use a hypothetical company. So I'm going to put I'm XYZ, and I'm going to make XYZ a corporation. You will want to fill this out with your business plan information. Now, if I choose to be a corporation, I can be an S Corp, which means I'm small and closely held. I can be a C Corp, which means I'm large and publicly traded. Or I can be a nonprofit or not-for-profit, however you want to frame this, meaning that I am a charitable organization. Now, important to note, I'm going to take this out. I'm going to switch my entity. So you can see an LLC. An LLC is a limited liability company. I apologize if you can hear the storming in the background. It just took off raining frantically where I am, so hopefully it's not too distracting on the recording. The other type of business entity you can consider is a limited liability company, an LLC. So I want to do a really quick pulse check before I go through and kind of break down the business entities. For those of you on the live session, and you can just type in the chat box either Inc. or Corp or LLC, what type of business entity are you thinking about? Inc. and Corp you can use interchangeably. Limited liability company is very specific. Give it just one more second. Okay, so I've got a few different options here, a few LLCs, I have corporation as well. I want to give a couple of pieces of information just so that way you have kind of a foundation to make a determination between corporation and LLC. So I'm going to start off with LLC because that's what I'm looking at in front of me. One of the questions that commonly get asked by students who are looking to launch as an LLC is, can I launch as an LLC and then when my company gets big enough, can I become a corporation? My initial immediate answer is bad idea. It's not a good idea to jump from one entity to another. If you start out as a limited liability company, your intent should be in 5 months, in 5 years, in 15 years that you would still be an LLC. If you have any intent or hesitation to switch entities, do it from the jump start. Think about switching your entities as hitting reset on your entire business as being a person. A limited liability company, just like a corporation, when you launch, you're brand new, you start to build history, you start to build your credit reports, you start to build all of your network contacts, etc. When you go from one entity to another, you lose that history. You lose all of those different foundational items that you've structured, like your credit report and things of that nature. So you want to be cautious. If you want to start as a limited liability company, you should want to stay in an LLC in the future. Limited liability companies have existed for a little over 30 years. They're newer. They're meant to be more dynamic in the fact that you can have an advisory board. You don't need a board of directors, but there are a few things to know about LLCs. They're not bad, they're just points of information. Number one, if your company is going to do a lot of international business dealings, please note that limited liability companies do not exist around the world. So you may land in a country that does not recognize limited liability companies. So please note that. So if you're intending to do a lot of international business dealings, an LLC might not be the best fit, depending on the countries where you would have business dealings. Number two, for LLCs, we have had a few different court opinions in recent years where our courts have said that if you are a limited liability company of one, you are the founder and you are the business entity, that there is actually no difference between you and the business entity. That's kind of a risky place to be, because with our recent decisions where an LLC of one is the same as the person, you are losing that corporate protection. So if you and the LLC are the same, we've had a few court cases where the limited liability company, the business, gets punched through and you end up with personal liability. Not a fun place to be sitting. The other thing to note with a limited liability company, one of the things that's highlighted is the fact that it's very dynamic and very easy to work with. Just to counter the point, and it actually solves the personal liability issue as well as the dynamic issue of being easy to work with and kind of customize. We now have the majority of our jurisdictions in the US will allow you to be a corporate structure of one. You can be your own CEO, you can be your own board of directors. And I have a question in the chat box, and I appreciate this. This is a great question, because the question says, do I need to hire someone? It doesn't work that way. For an LLC to not be a limited liability company of one, you actually need to have a co-owner, you need to have a co-founder, you need somebody to be listed as a business partner. So it's not enough to hire a person, you actually need to put them on your business registration as having ownership interest. So there is that to consider. For the LLC, one other thing to note, limited liability companies do not have chief officers. So I'm going to use that to pivot, because we're going to talk about corporations, whether you're an S Corp, small, closely held, a C Corp, large, publicly traded, or you're a nonprofit or a non-for-profit. Our corporations, regardless of structure, will have, or I should more aptly say, can have, chief executive officer, chief financial officer, chief operations officer, etc. All those chief officers live in the corporate world. If your business is looking to franchise, to expand and grow, you'll have multiple locations. A corporation has the structure to be able to franchise. An LLC merely has the structure to be able to license out intellectual property. It's a different framework, a different type of protection. An S Corp has the ability to have parent and sub companies. Thus, you may have heard somebody talk about a sub corp. You can structure a corporation like a family tree, which is another helpful thing to consider. So with a corporation, you can have a parent corporation that serves as an umbrella, and then you can have other business entities as corporations under that umbrella, which some companies may have that prove helpful. Corporation is a corporation the world around, which some entities have that as a support. If you're going to do a lot of international business dealings, that can sometimes be a very beneficial space to have different recognitions as far as your corporation being recognized in other countries as a corporation, whereas you may land in a company, or a country, I should say, where your company isn't recognized because it's a limited liability company. In addition, when it comes to court history, you can look at all sorts of prior court cases, tons of legal precedent regarding corporations as a whole, whereas with limited liability companies, you're only looking at a few decades of protection. as far as court cases where you could refer back for support. So definitely some things to think about. There's not a right or wrong answer, but just know if you're going to have heavy international business dealings, if you're a high liability business, if you have a lot of case history in your industry of liabilities and risks, you may want to consider a corporation. If it's just you as the founder and you're not going to have other business partners who have ownership interest, corporation may be a better fit just because of the fact that you're less likely to have the punch through aspect. Or if your dream is to always be a chief officer, corporation is going to be the place to be. As a limited liability company, one last thing to note is the fact that it is a company. Your final 2 months of the program, you will want to make sure you remember this. It is a limited liability company. It is not a corporate structure. So just note this. Oh, and I have a question as far as hierarchy with corporations. With, excuse me, with a corporation typically will have a parent company that's a C Corp. It's large, it's publicly traded. Think any of the big players in the industry. Anybody who you would own stock is a C corporation. So if you're looking at brands like Disney for theme parks or Apple for computers or Facebook for social media, they're all C corps. When you're looking at S corporations, these are small, privately held. You're not going to do big, publicly traded entities in that space. So an S corp, small, closely held company, where you may have, you'll have fewer than 150 investors, and there'll be certain requirements potentially to fit into that space. With a limited liability company, an LLC can have a contract with another entity, but it won't have a family tree structure like you can have with a corporation. Makes sense? And the best visual I can give, if you think about LLCs, I'm really hoping everybody on this GoTo has at some point as a child or even as an adult blown bubbles, like the little soap bubbles where they all float apart separately in the wind, versus I hope everybody here has seen a bundle of balloons. So if you think about it that way, an LLC is like blowing through that wand of soap bubbles. You have a whole bunch of little orbs that are just kind of loosely floating around, is kind of the best way to think about an LLC. Whereas if you have a corporation, it's like holding a handful of balloons. They're very easy to tie together, they're very easy to structure, etc. So that can be something that's beneficial. When it comes to the theater business, typically you are structured as an S Corp unless are you purely independent holding a franchise, or are you starting a new entity that would be franchising for my movie theater? I just need a point of clarification. All right, great question. And I was waiting for that question. Okay, really quickly, let me answer the theater question first. I'll double back to the LLCs because I know I have existing LLCs this month. So let me kind of clarify here. For my theater question, to clear that off the table, if you are going through with the intent of franchise, you must be a corporation, and you would more likely than not start off as an S Corp, and then as your entity grew, you would become a C Corp. You can actually franchise it as an S Corp. And one quick other side note before I go back to the LLCs, since I have the corporation structure in dialogue right now, it is important to know that if you are going to have international founders, international investors, you need to look at the corporate structure. There are heavy restrictions for international investors coming on board with limited liability companies. The restrictions are not to the same extent when you are dealing with the corporate structure. So just an FYI, if anybody here would have international founders or international investors, a corporate structure may actually be prescribed for you. So you want to make sure you're on top of that so you don't end up registering as an LLC and then having the state say, wait, because of international investors, you need to pivot and structure as a corporation. So I have a couple of questions. Could an S corp have an LLC under it? An S corp can do business dealings and as part of a contract, agree to have business dealings with an LLC, but it's not going to have that parent-child org chart type structure. It's going to be something that you would formulate based on contracts. So can your business entity go through and focus on or divert attention to an LLC via contracts? Yes, you can. You have to manage two separate entities, however. And I have a question if you're already an LLC. If you're already an LLC, it works for you. You're not doing a lot of international dealings. You aren't looking to franchise out. If it's something where the chief officer titles aren't a big deal to you, you're an industry where LLCs will work and function well, you have more than one person who is listed on your registration form, an LLC can be a comfortable space to live. So know that they're not bad, they just aren't as dynamic with some of the opportunities. If you would want to shift from one entity to another, know that you have to take that prior entity completely out of business and then transition into the new business entity. You will lose any history that you had. So as an example, if you have a corporation, you want to change it to an LLC, the prior business entity, the corporation, has to be announced as closing its doors and going out of business. You have to deal with all of the accounts payable, accounts receivable, shut the company completely down. Then and only then can you go through and open the new business entity as the new format. You will lose any of the credit history from the prior business entity. And you will also lose the ability to say that XYZ Inc. has been in business for 25 years. As soon as you transition to a different entity, you're losing that history that the named entity would have. So just some points of information to know. As I mentioned, it's not good versus bad. It's just good information to have. If you're starting from brand new, from scratch, it's good to know the most recent information. Probably those most recent limited liability company cases where somebody has punched through and grabbed the individual right through an LLC because the person and the business are basically the same thing is the biggest thing to keep in mind, particularly if you are an entity of one. It's not an employee, it's a business partner that you would need for that support. So just some things to consider. So you will either have the name of your company, LLC, and state limited liability company, or I'm going to go ahead and switch it. You would put a corporation, which typically you will start out as an S Corp in the eyes of the IRS, and then you would update if you want to be publicly traded. And you would put here either Inc. or Corp as your extension. It's your personal preference if it's a corporate structure. Now, next thing we look to is principal place of business. With principal place of business, you need to think about physical location for your company. You may right now just kind of have a general idea. So you are welcome to put to be determined, but at least narrow down city, state, zip, and or country. So as an example, I'm going to put Winter Park, Florida, 32792, USA. You are welcome if you don't want to put TBD. If you know exactly where you'll be located, you can put the actual physical address, particularly those of you who are already registered. You can put your physical address here. You can put to be determined if you haven't narrowed it down yet, or you can put 123 Apple Lane, whatever you want to put here. But know that in the next 2.5 months, you will need to have a physical address because this will impact various elements of your financial and business plan as a whole. We then look at name and address of your registered agent. Your registered agent is an individual over the age of 18 who will be accepting and processing paperwork for your business. They will be receiving any lawsuit paperwork. They will additionally be receiving any paperwork related to business as a whole. This person has to be over the age of 18, has to have a physical address. As a side note, they also need to be responsible. They need to open mail. They need to be able to manage a schedule and priorities. So please keep that in mind. Some companies will actually go through and invest the money in a third-party registered agent. You pay for a year of registered agent services, and the fees will vary based on who it is. You can also pay an attorney to do this. Now, if you think back to your finance class, I am going to take a guess and say that some of your businesses, particularly the first 6 months, were not overly liquid with lots of cash reserves, which is part of the reason why a lot of companies, when they start out, the registered agent is the founder. It's one of the founders. You can list yourself. You don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to be a CPA. You just have to be over the age of 18 and a physical address. So it can be yourself. It can be a parent. It can be a friend. Again, for the purpose of the assignment, if you want to put to be determined, at least narrow it down city, state, country, some combination thereof. But no, you would put your own name, but know that you can put self or you can put whomever you would choose in this space. Any questions thus far? Okay, so far so good. Any questions you would have, feel free to chime in. Next thing we look to is purpose. So just quick Y for yes or N for no, those of you on the live session. Is your company for profit? Okay, everybody's for profit. Awesome. Everybody's going to have the exact same answer. The purpose of your business structure is any legal purpose. The reason why we list any legal purpose here is because the purpose of your company as a for-profit should be any legal purpose. It would be the equivalent of walking out of the door of your home or apartment or wherever you may have lived in your prior years growing up. And when somebody asks, hey, where are you going? Just turning around and saying, I'm going to go do anything that's legal, let the door fall shut. And the other person is like, oh, that's great. It gives you a ton of latitude. If you list any legal purpose, you will never be committing fraud by going outside of your business structure description, and you will never have to amend this to the state. So for my for-profit entities, any legal purpose is all you put. Walk away, set it down, don't expound, don't expand. It's 3 words. Any legal purpose, that's it. Now, I know for a fact I have at least one nonprofit, at least one charity this month. If you are a nonprofit corporation or a B Corp, a benefit corporation, you will not put any legal purpose. Any of my charities, you are going to have to put a supreme amount of detail. As a charity, there is a tremendous risk of fraud if you say, we can use this cash for anything. That's horribly dangerous. So any of you who would be a charitable focused nonprofit, you need to list what is your cause, how do you raise money, why do you raise money, and how do you apply that cash to reach the cause. It's a lot of detail. We have to follow it from the dream all the way through execution in this word map. So right now, as an example, it's October. You probably have seen pink ribbons somewhere or pink stuff in general for breast cancer in October. There are a whole bunch of charities in this space. If you read the business structure, the purpose information, they will explain different ways that they raise money, different events that they host, different goals that they have, and different means that they use to meet those goals. You need to spell that out if you are a charity in that purpose. So, any questions for my nonprofits, for my charities, do not hesitate to reach out and ask. For my for-profits, any legal purpose, and then move on. We're going to go ahead and move on to correspondent info. You will put your name or one of your business partners' names and list an email address you actually check. You should not be dusting off a junk email address. Know that this is the email address that the state will reach out to if there are any questions, concerns, updates, or renewals that the state will need. So that's a big focus area, something to consider. With our founder names, you will list the name or names of any founders and the titles. Again, keep in mind, if you are a corporate business structure, you may list chief officers. If you are an LLC, instead you will list presidents, vice presidents, directors, or managers. And know that as a corporation, you can actually list those president, vice president, director, and manager titles in addition to chief officer titles. As an LLC, you may use president, vice president, director, and manager, but not those CEO titles. And I have a great question. The question is, can you have more than one title? I typically will deter individuals from doing that. It's usually a red flag that you're very small. Typically, you'll have one main title, and your other title will kind of be a subsidiary of that. Typically, multiple titles will flag that it's a placeholder for someone else to come on board. You're better to take the more senior title. And if one of the titles is founder, you can just drop that off to begin with. It would be something you would include in your bio or description. So you don't need to put president and founder. You can just put president. You are welcome. If there aren't any other questions on the business, you will go up to the top and hit save. And I have a question about novelty titles. So if you want to put director of wizardry and fun or something like that, depending on your industry and your network, that can work. Just think about the different sandboxes you'll be playing in. Think about the companies that you'll be doing business with. All right. Once everybody is wrapped up with the first form, make sure that you hit save so you don't end up losing the first form. Since we are done with the first of our three forms, we are going to maneuver on forward into the copyright registration worksheet. The most frequent place where students lose 5 points is actually from the business registration page, with students with for-profits not wanting to list any legal purpose and then leave it alone. The second most frequent deduction is dealing with copyright registration in the very complex phrase, select only one. Now, if I ask you to select only one, if you could do me a huge favor and put a numerical representation in the chat box for those of you on the live session of how many select only one would reflect numerically. You would be shocked how many times I am scoring this assignment. I hit section one, has the numeral one right in it. It says select only one, and suddenly these boxes start getting checked like we're picking our pick six for a lotto or something crazy. For the type of work being registered, you may only select one. Now, some of your works, as an example, looking at my roster of attendees for the session tonight, excuse me, some of your works, movies, music videos, video games, your content is absolutely going to fall in more than one category, which also means it falls on more than one application. So you will select one of these 6 categories. Think of something your company would create. Would you have marketing materials? Would you have a business plan? Heck, do you want to protect the content of your mastery journal or your leadership portfolio? Think about what specific items you would want to safeguard and use that as your guide to check one of these 6 boxes. Logo, not an option. Don't give me a chunk of points. Logos do not fall under copyright. What do logos fall under? Logo is a visual manifestation of your brand. Logo falls under trademark. Not a problem. We'll get to trademark. Do not copyright a logo. You will be handing over fistfuls of points and I will be dying at a rapid rate. So please don't do that. So if we are looking at marketing materials, think about content on your website, content that you would create for your social media footprint. Think about scripts, think about storyboards, think about your mastery journal posts, your newsletters, think about any content your company would create, photos, etc. Think of one thing, narrow it down, and then pick a category. So as an example, if you want to protect your mastery journal post, you can use single serial issue. If you don't have trade secrets that you're worried about disclosing, you might use literary work to protect your business plan. You might utilize motion picture, audiovisual work to protect an animation or a short video that you have on your website. Maybe you have an audio recording of a performance or a sound recording of a performance that you want to protect. Or maybe you have photos, drawings, etc. for visual art. So pick one category here. You are then going to list the title of the work. I am going to pick visual art. You list whatever the title of the work is. For your company, you can list whatever the project would be called. You can list kind of a hypothetical name. Make sure it's something searchable if you are actually going to mobilize this, because this is how you and others would search for the work. So if for visual arts, I'm putting totally awesome photos. Know that that's not super descriptive. So for somebody to be able to see my image and say, hey, let me look that up on the Copyright Office, they need to know that they have to search totally awesome photos. Not so great. Oh, and fabulous question. I actually just had this talk last week for my campus cohort. If you remember, I told you a story on Friday about having a latte and answering some copyright questions to put like good energy into the universe, kind of. I actually met with a photographer specifically, and it was one of the questions I was asked was, hey, I have 150 photos. Can I register them as a group or do I register them one by one? Okay, copyright registration, you're spending like 50 bucks. 50 times 150 photos, it's cost prohibitive. You can go through and register the photo shoot as a group of images and then go through and take whatever your showpiece image is, what will be on the front of your marketing materials, and register that separately. put you in a beautiful space. So those of you who would be photographers, my musicians, my short story writers, my artists who create 25 character sketches, you can register the group as a whole, and then you can fish out whatever your showpiece is and register it separately as well. If I so boldly and daringly infringe on your showpiece work, I am infringing on the group of art that you have registered, and I am also infringing on the work that you registered separately. Make sense? Absolutely. Value add for those attending live. And I'm pretty sure as a continuation from the music discussion that we had earlier, there are silent cheers that I'm hearing from the back row, as it were. So yes, definitely worthwhile to make that investment in your future. A group registration with a collection of works does cost a little bit more, but it is still far less expensive than registering every single item individually. Now, to maneuver through the form, and as always, any questions that you have during the live session, feel free to ask as we continue to maneuver through. Any questions that you would have as you're reviewing the archive, don't hesitate to reach out. If your show that you're referring to is something that you will create through your business and it will contain unique content, you can go through and protect that unique content as motion picture or audiovisual for the video that you would utilize. Know if you are integrating content from third-party sources, if it's not content that you are uniquely creating, you then would exclude that third-party content from your registration. Now, unless that's correct, you would exclude third-party content from your registration. Is the question you would exclude it by name? Okay. Yes, kind of. In the copyright registration form, you exclude it by name, but you also have to refer to the specific content by registration, by license. Because the risk is if you say I'm excluding the music entitled Love Song, there may be 2,200 pieces of music entitled Love Song. So you need to say you're excluding the music entitled Love Song, registration number 867-123-5948, or whatever it might be. And just so you know, I seriously doubt that goes to that copyright. If it does, nothing short of a miracle. I apologize, whatever it does go to, because that was just me giving a sample registration number. Now, for serial issue, unless you check single serial issue, you do not fill this out. Serial issue is anything that comes out in a series or sequence, mastery journal, magazines, episodic television, anything like that. If you check single serial issue in section 1, you will fill out serial issue. You'll put volume, you'll put number, you'll put issue. You can skip ISSN because it's like a social security number, but you'll list frequency of publication. So as an example, if I am filling this out as a mastery journal, single serial issue, it'll be volume 1, it'll be number 1, it'll be issue number 9, assuming that this is your 9th mastery journal post. My frequency is monthly. If, however, you're filling this form out for audiovisual work or visual artwork or sound recording or whatever else, my tip, and a lot of students ask about this, you can delete it if it makes life easier, or just leave it blank. But if there's any chance you're going to want to fill it out if it's staring at you, just delete it. I don't even care. Same thing for previous or alternative title. If you have an alternative title, You can list that here, 2018 photos. I don't know. If there's no alternative title or previous title, again, you can just delete it if it brings you joy. You can streamline this if it makes it easier for you. You don't have to sit around and rack your brain. What's another thing I would have called it? You can just skip over it. For year of completion, you may never list a year later than the current year. The work has to be completed to be able to be registered, so you've got to list the year of completion here. Now, know that you may not have the work completed already. So if that's the case, know that you would list whatever the year is in which the work is completed, which would be the date that you would be registering it. Oh, great question. My question is dealing with single serial issue and how it relates to registration of anything that would be episodic, as an example, podcasts or video blogs. As long as those are episodic, if every Friday you're creating a Film Friday vlog, you can go through and absolutely register that as a single serial issue. Anything that's episodic of sorts can fall under single serial. So if it's a podcast or a vlog, as long as it's something that you consistently are doing, you can use single serial. If it's something where you vlog 3 times and then you don't do a video blog for 3 months, that's not a good fit for single serial. Episodic TV, anything that has episodes. So the new fall season just started. What's your favorite show? Welcome to episodic TV. So it's Monday night, whatever's on TV tonight, right now, or in the next half hour, I should say. Those every single week is a brand new episode. Or this even translates into episodes that will drop related to series. So if any of you are in the trend of watching an entire series on streaming, you watch all 13 episodes or all 20 episodes in one sitting. Welcome to episodic. Some shows will release at once, some shows will release in a sequence or series, which is why they're called serial works. Okay, I think I have one question pending and one question posted. If not, my chat box is asking questions for each other, which is amazing. Um, so if I'm dealing with a game, what do you do with the assets? So with the assets for your game, if they are visual arts, they would fall under VA. If they are dealing with audio recordings, they would fall under SR. All the individual pieces and parts that would come into your project will be protected under their respective categories, if that makes sense. You are welcome. Okay, so the question is dealing with serial content when you're dealing with, as an example, a TV series. So typical TV series, you have 26-ish episodes throughout the season, somewhere around that, depending on what the broadcast channel is. With a single serial issue, you are either going through and highlighting a chunk of the season. So as an example, the fall season, you would upload your 10 to 16 episodes, depending on the show ish. And then you would do the same thing for spring. So you would go through and update the data and information for each of the series, or you can even upload individual episodes if you would want to be that detailed. You see early on in the career of certain shows that there's a registration that is looking at the pilot and maybe the first few episodes, and then it will expand from there to anticipate the future growth of the show. No, it's okay. Any other questions you have, definitely ask along the way. If nothing else, it makes it more interesting for me, which is always a plus. So any other questions, don't hesitate to let me know because I will let you know, particularly for my online cohort. I will geek out on law stuff until 2 in the morning if people let me. So please feel free. Remember, I'm the commissioner of Full Sail's Fantasy Supreme Court of the US League, so I can geek out on some law stuff. So no worries there. With that being said, the next question that you will fill out, it is awesome. We finished in the top 25 every single season I've served as the commissioner, just saying. Okay, focusing back on the copyright registration worksheet, we're going to look at publication next. If the work has not been published, you will skip publication. In particular, top of mind in my mind is dealing with my music folks, because I know I have a number of business plans that are in the music space. I've been reading a lot about copyright infringement for the past week, needless to say, from the music space of businesses. So those of you in the music space, if you have posted content onto video platforms, onto audio platforms, if you've posted content to sharing sites, to aggregators, anything like that, you need to list what was the date of publication, what was the nation of publication, and if it was published as a contribution to a greater work. So if you put this song into an album that was in honor of, today is Columbus Day, aka Indigenous People Day, whatever else you would want to refer to it as, I have no mail day, etc. So if you're submitting a song in honor of it being October 14th, you would be on the There Is No Mail Today compilation album. So you would list the title of whatever that greater published work is, date of publication, nation of publication. If this does not apply, if you haven't uploaded onto a platform, if you haven't publicly performed, if you haven't broadcast in a theater or a classroom or anywhere else, you skip publication. I always recommend hitting save. We did look at a lot of small little nuances, so I always recommend hitting save. Section 1 always has a lot of details. For section 2, we are looking at author information. You can approach this one of two ways. Either number 1, you will fill this out personal name, your name, the creator's name, the artist's name, whatever you want to characterize it as. If you fill this out personal name, you will put your name or whomever the artist is, and you will list their year of birth only the year. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put my name in here. For your year of birth, some students are a little hesitant to list their actual year of birth. You are welcome to put a hypothetical year. So if you aren't comfortable with putting your actual year of birth, just remember, if you're submitting this to the Copyright Office and you're putting a hypothetical year, I'm going to put 2001, not my date of birth, but we're just going to check it out there as an example. Know that if you're going to grab this form and use this as the absolute spine of your business, and you're going to use this as kind of a mirror if you would register a copyright in the future, know that this actually has to reflect your year of birth on your driver's license, birth certificate, etc. And I have one quick question about the publication code. No, you do not need to list your ISRC or any other similar code with publication. No need there, but good question. One last thing in section 2, when it comes to personal name. Unless you are dealing with a case where the person is already actually deceased, I don't care that it's October, I don't care that it's almost the 31st, do not pick some future year if you are alive and list it randomly as your year of death. It is super creepy and not cool. So please do not list year of death. Every now and then I'll be grading and it's a current student's name, it's their year of birth, and then it's some random year in the future for year of death. Not cool. No ha ha ha. No final destination. Not okay. Not cool. With that being said, if you want to use something other than personal name, you can use organization name. So you can put the name of your company if this is something that's being created as a work made for hire. So you would put the name of your company, XYZ Inc. And if you have a DBA, which is a doing business as, a DBA is a nickname or alternative name for your company. You can list that here. So if you're XYZ Inc. and your DBA is Awesome Works, oops, and that's kind of your company's alternative name, awesome. List a DBA, no worries there. If there is no DBA, skip it. Absolutely skip it. Just to give you a quick little bit of history here, quick little bit of information. When it comes to Full Sail University, when we registered, we actually surrendered the right to use FSU. As a Gainesville grad, as a University of Florida grad, I was okay with that. It's part of the reason why you see us use just Full Sail without the university extension, or you see us use FS. So just a point of information there. Interesting, fun trivia for graduation day. You use personal name or organization name, and then if you choose to use organization, you can use DBA if relevant. If not, you can skip it. So for organization name, just the name of the organization. The reason why we have DBA is the nickname. It's okay. DBA is the nickname for the organization. If instead of a work made for hire, because if you're using organization, you're going to click work made for hire. If the business owns it, work made for hire, organization name. If the business does not own it, you put your name or whoever the creator's name is. I'm just going to, as a placeholder, put artist. Whoever your creator is, you would put an actual name here. When you drop down to author contribution, you can put anonymous, meaning that the artist doesn't want to affiliate at all, or you can check pseudonymous. Pseudonymous is a pseudonym. It's a nickname for the personal name. If you use organizational name, you can put a DBA. That's the nickname. If you use personal name, you put a pseudonym. So you would list whatever the pseudonym is here if you're using a pseudonym. And you, of course, want to list citizenship as well as domicile. So in the United States, if it's domestic, if it is other, you'll check the box and list other. And no worries on the oops. I see the oops in the chat box. I'd rather have you oops in the chat box than have a mistake on the form. So any questions, as always, just let me know. If you list personal name, don't click contribution. For contribution, are you looking in the author created section? Oh, as far as author's contribution, sorry. Okay. For personal name, yes. For contribution, you can choose if it's personal name to use anonymous if you want your personal name to not be affiliated with the work, or you can choose pseudonymous if you want to use a pen name. For organization name, you use made for hire. For personal name, you would use anonymous, pseudonymous, or nothing at all. If you want to affiliate by your own legal name, you check nothing in author contribution. Your legal name will attach to the work. DBA is an alternative name for your business. It's an alternate name. Yep. So if you're listing personal name, you can leave this blank, or you can check anonymous if you want your name to fall away from the work, or you can check pseudonymous and put your pseudonym here. If you think about authors, if you think about certain artists, what's on their driver's license would be personal name. What their stage name is would be their pseudonym a good bit of the time. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I could see that. So you are welcome to leave it blank if you want to affiliate by your own name. I know it's completely kind of counterintuitive, and it's part of the reason why, for those of you who don't want to leave blank spaces, if you're going to be reviewing this later and wonder why didn't I answer this, if it makes you feel better, you are welcome to delete it. It's part of the reason why up above in section 2 I was deleting stuff. Some students, versus leaving something blank, they would much prefer to delete it. Just make sure, as an example, if you use organization name, you've got to check made for hire, because for your company, it's a work made for hire. That's why the company has the interest. So be diligent in that space for sure. And then the last thing we look to in section 2 is what the author created. Make sure the content in this space is going to accurately reflect what you selected in section 1. So if in section 1 you were looking at a certain focus area, you want to make sure you're only selecting categories that relate to that area. The only freebie that everyone gets is editing, regardless of what you put in section 1. If you want to list editing, it's fair game. But please consider, if you're registering visual art, performance, motion picture, something like that, don't put text and poetry. If you're dealing with performing arts, don't check lyrics. PA forms don't pick up lyrics. SR forms do, as long as your performer and your writer are the same person and the enunciation is flawless. Sound recording actually can pick up lyrics. I would still always recommend going through and doing a separate literary works form. Multiple choice is okay. You can check more than one box. Just make sure it fits within your section 1 categories. Yep, make sure it fits within section 1. So as an example, if you have a sound recording can, in theory, include music, lyrics, and the sound recording performance, as well as editing. And if it's a group of work for other artists or a group of work from one artist, collective or compilation could be utilized. Where this gets a little tricky is when I'm going through scoring and up above a category is selected and then down below conflicting content, or within this category, different classes, different categories are protected. So make sure it makes sense. And also don't grab for more than you need. If you're not doing sculpture, don't check sculpture. Copyright Office only wants to see what you're actually registering, so don't get super creative. You don't have better value the more boxes you check or anything like that. I would highly recommend hitting save again, just because you're halfway through the pages, and sections 1 and 2 of the copyright form are the most information dense. So I would definitely hit save again if it were me. Section 3, you are going to go through and put your copyright claimant info. All of you who are asking about putting personal and organizational name, this is where you can rock and roll with that theory. So you are more than welcome to put your name. You are more than welcome to put your company's name. You can put the DBA if you have one. If not, leave it blank. You'll put the address if it's to be determined or if you actually have an address. I'm just switching to full sail because it's easy for me to fill out. I've typed this for many times over my years here at the university, so it's easy to fill out. Again, put an email address that you actually check and a phone number that you actually use. And then if the claimant isn't the author, I need to list how I got the rights. Since both personal and organizational name are not listed in section 2, I would put written agreement. If you receive via will or inheritance, you have a space for that. If you received it some other way, you have space for that. Know that you'd only pick one if necessary at all. Copyright claimant is the person who will officially be published to the world as being the individual who is claiming ownership. Now, I recommend, unless any of you really like typing your data a lot, I recommend highlighting section 3 because more likely than not, your initial rights and permissions contact is the same person as your claimant. So unless you want to retype, if it's easier, for most of us it is, you are welcome to copy from permission or from personal name through phone number and just paste. Your rights and permission contact is the individual who will be contacted if somebody wants to use your work. They want to reproduce it, they want to make an adaptation, they want to do a performance, etc. I would recommend, as always, hit save once you wrap up on the last page of the copyright form here. Because with the trademark, which is our last form, we're thinking about a brand here. So for the owner of the mark, you would put your company. I'm going to put my company here of XYZ Inc. If you have a DBA, you would list the DBA here. If not, as always, skip it. For the structure, since it's Inc., it'll be a corporate structure. Again, you're going to put address, narrow it down, city, street, state, zip code, country, as much detail as you can offer. Listing contact information, email address. If you have a web domain that you own, I know some companies are already registered, already have business dealings that are ongoing. You can list your existing website or your intended site, or you can just skip it. Personal preference, whichever you prefer. For your mark desired, in this space, you are going to list what type of mark, what thing you're registering. So name, logo, logo, slogan. I'm going to go ahead and put name, makes life a little easier. If you're doing logo, drop and drag your logo in this space, put your name in this space. put your slogan in this space. For trademark registration, you may only register one item at a time. So you can't register your name, logo, and slogan simultaneously. Those are separate forms. So I'm going to put the name of my company again. And I'm also going to hit save one more time because we're about to hop on to the USPTO website to do a quick search to find out the international class and description. So go ahead, click save one more time. That way, in case your website is not happy, you still have yourself protected here. And then you'll want to open a browser window to the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So just a quick Y for yes for my live cohort. Once you're on uspto.gov, just drop me a Y for yes so I know you're here. We have almost everybody. We'll give it just another second. Make sure you're on uspto.gov. Excellent. We're going to go under trademarks on the drop-down box and go to searching trademarks. Trademarks and searching trademarks. I'm going to skip the survey. USPTO does a great job. We'll get that later. And then you're going to click search trademark database. So I went to trademark, search trademark database, click on this link. It will give me the opportunity to search in a couple of different ways utilizing TESS, our trademark electronic search engine. So TESS is going to be the powerhouse to allow us to search. I will highly recommend to you to use the new user basic wordmark search. So you'll click here. And then in this box, search major competitors. Don't search your own name, search brands of big competitors. Because this will help you see what classifications, what international classes they have registered. So if XYZ Inc. is a coffee shop, I can put in quotes coffee shop, and it will go through and give me all the brands that have to do with coffee shops. So Roofer's Coffee Shop, as an example, based in California. Class 35, dealing with their website. Class 41, online articles. Not helpful. I will look at another one of these, Drip Drop Coffee Shop. Class 43, coffee shop. If I ever needed a goods and services description, class 43 is coffee shops. If my business is a coffee shop, this is a brilliant choice. If I go through and look up another, I'll look up the coffee shop. Class 35, retail services featuring coffee. So class 35, retail, they're selling coffee beans. If I look at Dad's Coffee Shop, this is class 30, bakery products, coffee, cocoa, baking mixes, etc. If you don't want to put a description like coffee shop, you can also put a brand like Starbucks. And you can start looking to see what your big competitors have for classes. So as an example, for Starbucks, I see class 32 for fruit juice drinks. I see class 35 for retail music, CDs, etc. I see class 30, which is dealing with coffee, tea, cocoa, etc. So for me, I think this is going to be my best bet. It covers coffee, it covers some different snacks, hot chocolate. Once you find an international class, which is this IC number, that's a good fit, I am going to remember IC030. I'm just going to remember International Class 30. However, for goods and services, I am going to highlight under goods and services from G&S, which is goods and services, all the way through first use. I'm going to copy. I am then going to go to my document and I am going to paste. And then I need to remember International Class 030. So look up some of your big competitors, look at the international classes under goods and services that are important to them, because that will give you support and insight as far as what the best fit will be for your own registration. Once you have an international class and a description, you will hit save. And I have a really great question. What if there are multiple numbers? And I pulled one earlier that actually had multiples. Let's see if I can pull another one here out of the blue. If I can find one that has more than one. Some of these registrations will list multiples. If not, you may see multiples. So as an example, this is class 30 with ice cream. This one is going to be a similar one. Here we go. This is class 25 t-shirts, polos. So if my company is going to do coffee and polos, I can put class 25 in here as well. Know that if you are registering these with the USPTO, each class is going to be a separate charge, but you can actually put multiple classes on one registration form. Make sense? Yes, you will have multiple international classes on the same form. Here we go. So as an example, Starbucks coffee, international class 30, ready to drink coffee, coffee-based beverages, international class 32, coffee flavored soft drinks. So I can grab both of these and carry them over. Once you have the international class and the goods and services description, you can go ahead and hit save. You don't need the US code. You can leave it in there if you would choose, you just don't need to. So once you have international class and the digits and then the description, go ahead, hit save one more time or hit save like 5 more times to make sure that you don't accidentally hit close and lose all the work. Give it a quick proofread. My biggest tip, proofread it once the GoTo is over, upload it. That way you won't forget. So proofread it, upload it, done. If there are any other questions, don't hesitate to let me know. I'm going to go ahead and jump over so we can wrap up the remainder of the assignment. So business registration worksheet, check. Copyright registration worksheet, check. Trademark registration worksheet, check. We are getting things done here. We then look at your digital leadership portfolio. Oh, no worries. Any connectivity issues, just feel free, double back. I'll post the archive in a little bit, but any questions, feel free. If you want to hop out and hop back in, you're welcome to do that as well. Thank you for joining in. Hopefully we'll see you shortly. For digital leadership portfolio, describe what you're adding to your portfolio this month. Make sure you submit your portfolio link and make sure that you review the content plan as far as whatever revisions that you're working on. So digital leadership portfolio, you should be pretty comfortable with as far as the work that you have for deliverables. But if you do have any questions, this is just further enhancing your digital leadership portfolio in your industry for it to serve as an asset as you expand your footprint within the market. Mastery journal. You should also be pretty comfortable with this personal journey that you are journaling, where you are talking about your expectations and goals that you set in mastery for the AEL course. So, what were you thinking about for this month back when you were in month one? What goals did you set? And how did this course meet your goals, or what other goals do you still have outstanding that you may need to work on still? What takeaways, what things did you learn? How do they apply for personal and professional? Keep in mind, you need to submit your content of your journal to turnitin.com so you get that detailed feedback. So please make sure for any of your written assignments that you're submitting that content on Turnitin. The only exception is the leadership portfolio. That I need to go to your portfolio page. It doesn't really function and work well in the Turnitin type format. You'll get feedback in a different way for that assignment. But when it comes to your registration forms, your mastery journal, your research paper, etc., make sure that you are utilizing that Turnitin platform. It'll be a huge help for you as well as for me. So make sure that the content that was going on your mastery journal is saved and placed on to Turnitin for review. Couple of reminders for APA. Make sure for APA format that you have a title page with a proper header. Make sure that you are not using first person or second person. So no I, me, my, we, you, your, anything like that. Also, do not use contractions. One of my big tips, if any of you adore using contractions, do a search. Utilize that find function in your word processing software to go through and locate apostrophes. Sometimes students have heard this tip previously, sometimes this is a new thing, but I always recommend look for apostrophes. If you do a search for apostrophes, you may have some things pop up that are not just merely possessive, but are actually contractions. So it's a good way to catch contractions if you like using contractions. It's a formality thing. If you're writing, I don't think we should, it's very informal versus a bar must, a video game company should, XYZ Entertainment may, the artist will. It's a different level of formality than I think you should. Make sure you have quotes and in-text citations anytime you have 4 or more items taken directly from a third-party source. Also, make sure that you have a reference page double-spaced with hanging indent. These should just kind of be quick overview reminders. For research paper, your research paper, you will be reviewing one decided court opinion, one decided court case. For my campus cohort, we'll talk more about this in the next class. For my online cohort, look for feedback on that research paper outline. For your research paper, you'll be reviewing the facts of the case, the issues, the application of the law to the case, the court's analysis, as well as the court's final decision. And you'll be applying the lessons that you learn to your business plan in third person. For court case citation, I highly recommend take a screenshot or equivalent, so that way you have this for easy reference. For case citation, you will have the judge's name with the year, the case name, comma, and the court, a period, the retrieval date, comma, and the URL. So those are going to be the fundamental elements. Utilize this as the format for case citations. Know that as an attorney, we have a completely different citation format that's totally unique to the world of law. So utilize this format for APA citations. There is no real great form translation for court cases to be cited. So this is kind of the best practice when it comes to court citation. So judge name, year, case name, court, retrieval date, URL. Success tips. Number 1, first and foremost, proofread, proofread, proofread. When I've had students in the past make some wild and woolly typographical errors, It always makes it an interesting adventure to go through and score. This cohort, my biggest tip, number one, first and foremost, keep words that are only one word, only one word. The word lawsuit is one word if it's litigation, it's two words if it's fancy clothes you wear to court. So, lawsuit, all one word, talking about litigation. If you are talking about copyright, when it comes to copyright law, protecting works of art, copyright is all one word. So make sure you're watching for that. Also, anything that has a lot of sounds alikes, watch for that as well. So as an example, the word there, you need to think about the context. The word weather, is it that it's pouring down rain outside, or is it whether or not? Is it kind of that alternative usage? So think about proofread. I always recommend using the text to speech within your word processing program. It's a good way to get the discussion out of your own voice and put it into a computer's voice, which is sometimes helpful. Don't rely on a third-party software to proofread flawlessly. That sometimes can get a little scary and confusing. And make sure under APA citation format, at very minimum, your references should be the court case, and at very minimum, you should cite to that court case at the end of each paragraph. So any questions that you would have, let me know. I know some students want to cite at the end of every sentence, even if there is one reference solely and it's the court opinion. If you choose to do that, I am totally on board. Cite at the end of every sentence. Some students, it gets very cumbersome, especially if you're just using the court case. So if you want to cite at the end of every paragraph, if it's just the court opinion, I am amenable to that outcome. I will support that as well. So whatever is the best return for you on creation. If you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to reach out. My email's up there. I check my messenger frequently. A couple of members of this cohort have reached out via my cell phone, which I'm perfectly okay with. The number listed as my home will actually route to my cell if I'm not there. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Any questions that you would have, just leave me a voicemail. I can go ahead and respond back to that. It's super easy. If I'm not sitting at my desk, I can get the message far more efficiently. So any questions or concerns you may have, I am happy to stick around and answer those. For those of you joining via the archive, I hope you have an amazing night and an amazing week. Thank you so much.